G'day guys, and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson, we're looking at key knowledge point 316. That is Unit 3, Area of Study 1, and the 6th key knowledge point for this area of study. Today specifically, we're looking at the appropriateness of different management styles in different contexts. The conditions that apply in different contexts that will determine whether a management style is the most appropriate or not are the nature of task, time, experience of employees, and of course, the manager's preference. Now, you might recall from the previous lesson that a management style is a manager's way of doing things, the way they relate to their employees, the way they communicate with their employees, and the way they make decisions ultimately. We identified 5 management styles that are listed in the study design in our previous lesson. Those are Autocratic, Persuasive, Consultative, Participative, and Laissez-faire management styles. We identified that Autocratic is the most restrictive, where the manager retains the most control, and Laissez-faire, the least restrictive, when the manager has relinquished the majority of authority and decision-making control. Well, when it comes to determining whether a management style is appropriate or not, you can largely look at them from the perspective of what's going on with the employees. Where employees have very low skill and can't be trusted to know what to do, you can understand that managers retaining control and deciding things on the behalf of employees is going to be more appropriate, where in a situation employees might be more capable, more experienced, you can understand that management might be more appropriate for them to relinquish control over to those employees if the employees can be trusted to do the right thing. Looking specifically at the autocratic management style, some of the advantages or strengths of the autocratic management style come down to the fact that it's a wholly centralized management style. Managers aren't looking for input from their staff or from anyone else. They make decisions on their own. So you can expect that decisions are made quite quickly within an autocratic management style. Managers don't have to check in. They don't have to get feedback. They don't have to check for other people's feelings. They just make a decision and then they give clear directions to employees. So within this system, employees know exactly what they're meant to be doing, and they're very clear on their role. They're not there to ask questions. They're not there to have things explained to them. They're there to follow instructions. That's really all the good things we can say about autocratic management. Generally speaking, employees who work under an autocratic manager have far lower employee morale as when compared to employees under different styles of other managers. Generally speaking, employee development is going to be quite poor, very slow, or non-existent under an autocratic manager, because if you're not giving your employees any chances to try new things or to make mistakes and learn from them, your employees aren't going to develop their skills. Nobody likes being bossed around, so typically we'd say that relationships between employees and managers are going to be much poorer under autocratic style than other styles. And in a system or in a style where managers aren't looking for feedback or consulting with their employees, if they're just making decisions on their own, they're drawing inspiration from a very small pool of ideas. Well, if we look at these strengths and weaknesses, when can we say an autocratic management style would be appropriate? Generally speaking, in emergency situations or in times where rapid decision making is the most important aspect of all our considerations. So certainly, if there is an emergency like a fire, you would expect that it would be appropriate for management to don their hard hats and their fluoro vests and start telling people to head for the emergency exits. They don't necessarily need to form a round table and start consulting with people to work out what the right thing to do is under this situation. It doesn't matter if you're a highly skilled employee. In this situation, it is appropriate for a manager to just adopt an autocratic style and get people out safely and quickly. Other examples, well, that's a pretty simple example. Other examples of situations where employee knowledge or experience might not be necessary and rapid decision making is necessary is particularly in the event of a recall of a food-based product. If there's evidence of potential contamination of a food-based product or a pharmaceutical product, and there's the potential that customers could be harmed, the business needs to issue a recall immediately, production needs to stop, perhaps problems in operations need to be addressed rapidly, and perhaps in these sorts of situations, an autocratic management style is going to be appropriate. That's more or less it. We don't tend to recommend an autocratic management style in many cases, and certainly in the many years I've been teaching VCE Business Management, I've not come across too many case studies where it would be suitable to recommend an autocratic management style. The persuasive management style is quite similar to an autocratic management style. The key distinction being that a manager will not just give instructions, but they'll take time to try and persuade employees or convince employees why they should follow these instructions by providing the rationale behind decisions made. It's still a centralized decision-making system, so the strength that rapid decision-making is part of this management style remains. However, the persuasive management style differs from the autocratic management style with this extra explanation that a manager will give. So persuasive managers might find it easier to gain employee support through that provision of increased information. And once again, instructions are clear. And in fact, the clarity around instructions may be improved by the provision of extra information. Of course, the weakness of no employee input remains, and the effect of that might be low employee morale. Employees will continue to suffer stagnated or very low levels of development. However, perhaps, once again, hearing the rationale behind decision-making might contribute to an increased understanding of what's going on and why it's happening, which may help. Certainly, employees are expected to be frustrated. If employees do have the necessary skills that they could be trusted in a more decentralized model or trusted with a bit more autonomy, they will be very frustrated working in a persuasive management environment. And once again, the manager isn't consulting with anyone in a persuasive style, so the manager is drawing from a small pool of ideas. Well, a persuasive style is going to be best, once again, where decisions need to be made quickly, and generally speaking, employees lack experience or knowledge. So employees right at the beginning of their career, if they need to be trained up, and there's sort of the key word, environments where training and development are the priority, a persuasive management style might be more appropriate. You might find that some of your teachers adopt a fairly persuasive style at times through your education, where they're quite happy to explain to you what you're doing and why you're doing it, but they're not necessarily looking for your input into what you're going to be doing. Other teachers might adopt entirely different styles in their classroom. Certainly, a persuasive style is best where employees don't have the skills or experience to be trusted to make effective decisions on their own, and their understanding is important. If employees should understand what's going on and why decisions have been made, then the persuasive management style is going to be more appropriate than an autocratic management style. Generally speaking, the persuasive management style is only going to be the most appropriate style where employees lack knowledge, employee understanding is necessary, and tasks are quite simple. The consultative management style. One of the strengths of the consultative management style that helps differentiate it from the previous two is that you're drawing from a greater pool of ideas. Suddenly, this manager is receiving feedback and input from their employees, from co-workers, from other stakeholders, and all of that feedback, all of that consultation should improve the quality of decisions made. Employees can often feel that they're more invested in the decisions being made and feel more respected by having been part of the process. Certainly, that kind of respect and that kind of ability to contribute to decision making is going to result in higher employee morale, which should improve the confidence of employees within the workplace. However, consulting with people and seeking feedback is more time consuming than operating in a wholly centralized decision-making system. So one of the weaknesses of consultative management is that it is more time consuming. And it could be possible that a manager might seek the input of several stakeholders and then find that some of the recommendations perhaps weren't the most appropriate to move forward with. And when you've asked someone for their opinion and then you disregard their opinion, or their opinion isn't visible in the end product, it could be possible that you could be creating feelings of resentment in people who feel like their ideas are being overlooked. Certainly, a consultative management style isn't going to be appropriate if employees don't have significant experience in the matters being discussed. If employees don't know what they're doing, seeking their ideas and their feedback about a scenario might just be a waste of time. So that is one weakness of the consultative management style. To that end, when would a consultative management style be appropriate? Well, during times of change, seeking the input of the stakeholders who will be affected or impacted by a change is a wise thing to do. People don't like being told what to do, generally speaking. We've already said an autocratic manager is likely to produce low morale in their employees. So if you're going to be implementing changes that are going to impact your employees or your customers, seeking their thoughts and their feelings, their feedback on proposed changes before they're implemented is one way to lessen the blow and help these stakeholders to feel that they've been respected and their wishes or their feelings have been heard and acted upon. Certainly, in preparation for and during times of problem solving is a very good time for the consultative management style to be implemented, assuming once again that your employees have the necessary skills and experience to be making valuable contributions to those conversations. And once again, the consultative management style is best where a centralized decision is still required. Perhaps your business has been suffering a bit of loss of market share and sales are declining. Perhaps to cut costs, you've got to look at letting go a few staff, making some redundancies. Well, in this case, it's probably appropriate to adopt a management style like consultation. You could bring your staff together, you could look at problem solving, you could propose that you might have to go down this road of redundancies. You could ask the staff if there are any people in the affected teams who would like to self-nominate to accept redundancy. In these kind of situations, if you're showing care and concern for your employees and you're having them come along for the ride in this decision-making process in this significant time of change, you'll find that your employees will be much less likely to be resentful about the whole process. The participative management style. Well, if you engage and empower your employees to be making decisions alongside the manager, there's going to be a high level of trust shown to employees. There's going to be a large pool of ideas that can be drawn on for decisions to be made, and certainly you're going to build strong relationships between your employees and your manager because there's less of a hierarchy, there's less of that position of responsibility. Employees who are engaged in their own decision making will have higher motivation, and you would expect your whole team to have higher motivation as a result. Certainly, people tend not to feel resentful about decisions they've made for themselves, so employees are going to be more receptive for changes that are made within a participative management style. And as soon as you empower your employees to be making decisions and exercising autonomy, their development will be quite rapid, and employees in a participative style will rapidly develop their skills and experience. Of course, there are weaknesses. Once you decentralize decision making, everything slows down, and the participative management style can be far more time consuming than any of the management styles we've spoken about previously. Certainly, once you decentralize decision making, conflicts can arise due to disagreements. If more than one person has the authority for decision making, people can come to disagreement. Efficiency can absolutely be reduced when individuals come to differing conclusions, and time taken to resolve conflicts and overcome disagreements or come to resolutions it'll just take a lot more time, which reduces your efficiency. Generally speaking, there can be more time spent forming ideas and less time doing work, in addition to more time taken to actually come to conclusions. And ultimately, a manager's role can be undermined. A manager's role is already going to be less significant once we're talking about a decentralized decision-making and a flatter arrangement, less of a hierarchy in a participative management style. But in a system where the manager doesn't retain too much authority, or any authority really, it's possible that the manager may cease to be necessary. When is a participative management style best? Well, once again, during times of change, that strength that employees tend to be far more invested and don't typically become unhappy about decisions they've made for themselves means that times of change, if employees are choosing their own destiny, they'll be far more engaged with the process of implementing that change. However, it's necessary that any time you're going to implement a participative management style, you're talking about employees that have relevant experience and quite significant knowledge and skills, particularly around whatever the specific context is, and skills in decision making. If you're going to decentralize decision making, you need to know that these employees are equipped to be making decisions for themselves. Certainly, where employee creativity is important, then the participative management style is best. And this image, I hope, gives you an example of a scenario in which this would be appropriate. If your employees are a team of scientists and you've got a lab manager or some sort of head scientist in this research and development or in this medical laboratory, you would expect that everybody working there knows their jobs. They've got a significant wealth of skills and knowledge, and they can largely be trusted to undertake their research or pursue testing, whatever it is that these scientists might be doing in this image. But you could trust that they can largely be empowered to make decisions for themselves, while the manager might be checking in and setting deadlines and working with their staff rather than bossing their staff around and telling them what to do. And finally, laissez-faire management. Well, some of the strengths of laissez-faire management should be pretty obvious. Employees feel a sense of ownership, well, because they own what they're doing. They're left to their own devices, so they're going to have high level of motivation as long as they're working, that they know what they're doing. They've got freedom for creativity. Communication is completely open, so they can make requests of their manager if they need to, but they don't have to. They can talk to each other. It's unbounded, and often a laissez-faire management style is going to facilitate and encourage teamwork. If employees are trusted to be making their own decisions, generally speaking, if teamwork is the best arrangement for a project, employees will sort of work that out naturally and organically. Weaknesses, however. There is the potential for a complete loss of control by management. If managers aren't staying invested and engaged with what's going on, it's quite possible that employees who are making their own decisions could get completely off track of whatever it is that the institution or the manager had originally identified as their ideal. Certainly, if employees are deciding things for themselves, there's a possibility that time and resources can be wasted. Once again, if they're being used in a way that is not necessarily within the original design by the institution or the manager. It's possible that without clear lines of authority and delineation of roles, that there could be conflict between workers who might be getting in each other's way or stepping on each other's toes when they try and do things that other employees think are the other employee's own responsibility. And certainly overall objectives can be lost. If a manager is not there making sure that the processes being followed are driving this team towards the achievement of business objectives might be the first thing to go out the window, as employees might be inclined to pursue their personal goals instead. So when is a laissez-faire management style best? Well, when we're talking about working with experts or people who are so highly skilled they can be considered experts in their own right. When we're talking about employees that require the use of highly creative efforts, and where a manager might only be needed to empower or equip employees, perhaps to give them little reminders of deadlines, but generally, if the environment is such that things will be more efficient and effective if the manager stays out of the employee's way. Let's say, for example, you're a manager working for a publishing firm. You might be liaising with a number of authors. You remind them of publishing deadlines. Perhaps you liaise with their agent and set up publicity arrangements, but you don't know how to write a book, and that's really their bread and butter, so you leave them alone to write their book. Or perhaps you're a marketing director and you can liaise with clients about ads that need to be made, and you've got a team of graphic designers who, you don't know how to do graphic designing, but they do. They're very good at it. You tell them what sort of things you need and when it's needed by, and then you let them do their wizardry, their drawing, and you're just there to help them do that well. Whatever the case may be, if you're a band manager and you don't necessarily want to insert yourself on stage and tell them how to play their instruments, that sort of environment where employees can be trusted to do their job, do whatever it is that their role requires, perfectly satisfactorily, and in fact to a high level of satisfaction without your interference. So, in summary for this key knowledge, the appropriateness of any management style is going to depend on the manager's preference. If you're a grumpy old man, perhaps you're more prone to centralized decision making. If you're in an environment where you feel like your employees can be trusted, perhaps it's your preference to adopt a more decentralized style. The skill of the employees is necessary to consider. Once again, those expert employees will do better in an environment where a manager's not getting in their way, and low-skilled employees probably need much more scaffolding, perhaps need to not have authority thrust upon them. Time available for any situation. The urgency of a situation would dictate that a more rapid decision-making style, or management style, would be more appropriate. And certainly the nature of the task, whatever it is you're asking someone to do. It is important that managers seek, at every stage, to adopt appropriate management styles for the context they find themselves in. It's quite possible that a manager is capable of switching up the style of management based on a task, or based on the task in front of them. They might change from day to day. They might change several times a day. They might walk into a room where one task needs to be done and utilize one management style. And with another group of employees with a different task, they might utilize a different management style. Do not fall for the trap of thinking that one manager will always operate in one style. But generally, in this subject at least, when you're presented with a case study, or when you're asked to propose and justify a management style, we're usually looking at a single context, so you can concentrate on just worrying about one management style at a time. Well, that's all for today. See you next time.